I'm going to say something the medical system never explains clearly. Swollen feet after 60 are not harmless fluid. Doctors dismiss it as aging, but the truth is far more dangerous and easily reversible if you act before bed. Nighttime foot swelling is one of the most misunderstood warning signs in aging bodies, and quietly, it has ruined more independence than arthritis, back pain, or even high blood pressure. Most people are told it's gravity, or you were on your feet all day, or just cut back on salt. That advice sounds comforting, it sounds harmless, but it hides something far more serious, because what you're seeing in your feet at night is often a quiet signal of internal traffic failure. The body is trying to move fluid, waste, and pressure, and it's failing silently. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, one of the longest-living and most respected physicians in modern history, taught something that has stayed with me for decades. He said the body whispers long before it screams, and swelling is one of those whispers seniors are taught to ignore. He used a powerful analogy that I want you to picture clearly. He said the body is like a city at night. During the day, everything moves. Delivery trucks, garbage trucks, street cleaners. But if those trucks stop running after dark, waste doesn't explode immediately. It piles up quietly, street by street, block by block. That is exactly what happens inside your body when fluid begins pooling in your feet by evening. This is why I want to be very clear and very honest with you. Nighttime swelling is not just a cosmetic nuisance. It is about mobility. It is about balance. It is about the strain placed on your heart and kidneys. And ultimately, it is about whether you stay independent or whether you slowly begin to rely on others because your body no longer supports you the way it used to. I've seen this pattern too many times. A little swelling turns into stiffness. Stiffness turns into unstable walking. Unstable walking leads to falls, and falls at our age are often the event that changes everything. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Long-living populations around the world, the ones studied by Dan Bietner in what he calls the longevity zones, do not rely on aggressive treatments or intense fixes in the evening. They protect circulation through gentle daily rhythms, through evening rituals that help the body downshift, drain, and reset before sleep. They respect what happens in the final hours of the day, and that's where hope comes in. Because what you do in the 90 minutes before bed has a profound effect on the pressure building in your feet. The right actions, simple, calm, and precise, can help reverse that build-up night after night, not with drugs, not with extremes, but by working with how the aging body actually moves fluid. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through 4 escalating insights. Each one builds on the last. And the final one, the nighttime protocol most doctors never mention, is counterintuitive, gentle, and extraordinarily powerful when done correctly. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness, because when you listen early, you get to act early, and that changes everything. Let's begin. By the time evening arrives, most seniors notice the same thing. Shoes feel tighter, socks leave deeper marks, ankles look thicker than they did in the morning. And almost everyone reaches the same conclusion. I was just on my feet too long, or this is normal at my age. That belief is comforting. And it's incomplete. What's really happening begins much earlier in the day. After 60, the tiny valves inside your veins, especially in the legs, begin to weaken. These valves are supposed to close tightly after each heartbeat, preventing blood from sliding backward, but aging changes their structure. At the same time, the calf muscles slowly lose mass and power in a process known as early sarcopenia. The calves are not just muscles for walking, they are mechanical pumps. Throughout the day, gravity pulls blood and fluid downward. In a younger body, every step, every calf contraction helps push that fluid back up toward the heart. But in an older body, the system becomes inefficient. Blood pools, pressure builds. The lymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing excess fluid, becomes overwhelmed by evening. This is why swelling rarely shows up first thing in the morning. It reveals itself at night, when the system has been losing ground all day. A simple way to understand this is to imagine your veins as old elevator cables. When they're new, they lift weight smoothly and reliably, but as they age, they stretch and weaken. They don't snap all at once. They just stop pulling as effectively. The elevator still moves, but slower, heavier, and with strain. Fluid behaves the same way inside aging veins. What matters here is not intensity, it's timing. 2 to 3 hours before bed, gentle activation of the calves changes how the rest of the evening unfolds. 10 slow calf raises, done while holding onto a chair for balance, create a controlled squeeze that mimics what stronger muscles used to do automatically. Holding each raise for 3 seconds matters. That pause allows pressure to build and push fluid upward, rather than letting it slip back down immediately. This small movement reawakens what physiologists often call the second heart in the calves, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, mechanical way. Enough to reduce the burden on veins that have been fighting gravity all day. When this support is missing, fluid has nowhere to go by nightfall. And when it's restored, even briefly, the system regains just enough efficiency to change what your feet look like and how they feel by bedtime. This is the foundation. Everything else builds on it. When swelling shows up in the feet, attention almost always stays there. Ankles, shoes, socks. The problem appears local, so the explanation feels local. But in many aging bodies, the source of nighttime swelling sits much higher upstream. The heart and the kidneys function as a coordinated backup system. The heart moves blood forward. The kidneys decide how much fluid stays in circulation and how much leaves the body. In younger years, this partnership adjusts smoothly across the day. With age, both sides slow, not dramatically, but enough to change nighttime dynamics. As evening approaches, kidney filtration naturally becomes less efficient. This is a normal circadian shift, but in older adults, it becomes exaggerated. Fluid clearance slows. At the same time, the right side of the heart, the chamber responsible for receiving blood returning from the body, may lose a small degree of strength or elasticity. This doesn't cause chest pain or dramatic symptoms. Instead, pressure quietly backs up. Where does that pressure go? Downward, into the legs and feet. This is early venous congestion, and it often appears long before anyone uses the word heart in a doctor's office. A helpful way to picture this is to imagine a sump pump system in a basement. When everything works well, water is moved out efficiently, but if one pump slows, even slightly, water doesn't disappear, it accumulates. The basement doesn't flood all at once. Moisture rises inch by inch. In the body, the feet become that lowest point. Evening habits influence this backup more than most people realize. Fluid intake late in the day adds to the volume the kidneys must process at their slowest point. When that fluid isn't cleared efficiently, it remains in circulation longer. Gravity then decides where it settles. Position matters as well. Elevating the feet 6 to 8 inches above heart level for a short window in the early evening allows gravity to assist drainage instead of fighting it. 15 minutes between 7 and 8 in the evening often produces a noticeable difference by bedtime, not because anything dramatic changed, but because pressure was given a direction to move. The body is constantly negotiating flow, pressure, and timing. When the heart and kidneys lose even a small amount of coordination, the feet become the visible scoreboard. Swelling, in this context, is not a failure, it's feedback. And when that feedback is understood, the next layer of the problem becomes clearer. For decades, swelling has been blamed almost entirely on salt. Reduce sodium, and the problem should resolve. When it doesn't, frustration sets in. Meals become bland. Labels are scrutinized, and yet by evening the feet still swell. This is where the explanation shifts. After 65, many bodies enter a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation. It's not the dramatic inflammation of injury or infection. It's subtle, persistent, and largely invisible on routine tests, but it changes the behavior of blood vessels at the smallest level. Capillaries, which are meant to be selectively permeable, begin to stiffen. At the same time, inflammatory messengers like histamine and cytokines increase the tendency of vessel walls to leak. Fluid no longer stays neatly inside the pipes. It seeps into surrounding tissue, even when blood pressure and salt intake are well controlled. The result is swelling that seems illogical. The usual explanations no longer fit. An easy way to visualize this is to imagine a garden hose that has aged in the sun. The pressure inside may be perfectly normal, but the walls have become frayed. Tiny leaks appear along the length of the hose. Water escapes not because the pressure is too high, but because the material itself has changed. This is why stories like Linda's are so common. She removed salt from her diet with discipline and consistency, yet the swelling worsened, not because she failed, but because pressure was never the primary issue. Inflammation had quietly turned her vessels into poor containers. In the evening, the body becomes more sensitive to this leakiness. Circulation slows, heat from the day dissipates, tissues relax. Fluid finds its way into spaces it didn't occupy in the morning. Certain calming influences shift this environment. Magnesium in particular plays a role in relaxing smooth muscle and stabilizing vascular tone. A modest dose in the evening, paired with gentle warmth around the feet, changes how blood vessels behave at night. Warmth increases circulation without stress. Magnesium supports relaxation at the cellular level. Together, they don't force fluid out. They reduce the tendency for fluid to escape in the first place. When swelling is driven by inflammation rather than volume or pressure, this distinction matters. Because without addressing the leak, every other strategy feels like bailing water from a boat that still has holes. And this brings us to the final layer, the system responsible for waste removal that almost no one talks about after sunset. By the time night arrives, most people assume the body will naturally take care of itself once it lies down. Flat, still, resting. There is a quiet belief that gravity will stop pulling fluid downward and everything will simply drain away. On paper, that sounds reasonable. In real aging physiology, it often fails. The reason is simple but rarely explained. The lymphatic system, the body's primary waste removal and fluid balancing network, does not function like the heart or blood vessels. It has no central pump, no muscular engine pushing fluid forward. Instead, it depends entirely on motion, pressure changes, and breathing patterns to move lymph through its channels. When those signals weaken, lymph slows. And when lymph slows, fluid stays exactly where gravity left it. After 70, this slowdown becomes much more noticeable at night. Muscles relax deeply. Breathing becomes shallow and chest-centered. The diaphragm, which normally acts like a piston between the chest and abdomen, barely moves. The subtle pressure waves that help pull lymph upward all but disappear. What remains is stillness, and for the lymphatic system, stillness means stagnation. This is why nighttime swelling can persist, even after hours of lying down. Blood flow may redistribute, but lymph does not automatically follow. Excess fluid, inflammatory debris, and metabolic waste remain trapped in the tissues of the feet and lower legs. The body is not resting efficiently, it is holding on. An accurate way to understand this system is to imagine trash collection in a city without engines. The trucks are there, the routes exist, but nothing moves unless the streets are shaken and the signals are sent. If that doesn't happen, garbage doesn't suddenly disappear at night. It accumulates quietly, block by block. In the body, that accumulation appears as tight skin, puffiness, and stiffness in the feet by bedtime. Breathing plays a much larger role in this process than most people realize. Deep, diaphragmatic breathing changes pressure inside the chest and abdomen in a rhythmic pattern. Each slow inhale expands the diaphragm downward, gently compressing abdominal lymph vessels. Each extended exhale creates a pressure release that encourages fluid to move upward toward the chest, where lymph eventually re-enters circulation. This breathing pattern acts like a soft internal pump, especially effective when the body is horizontal. When breathing remains shallow, this mechanism is lost. The lymphatic channels remain quiet. Fluid remains pooled. The body enters sleep carrying the day's waste with it. Small movements at the ankles add another layer of support. The lymphatic vessels in the lower legs run alongside veins and respond to joint motion. Circular movements create gentle shifts in tissue pressure, enough to stimulate lymph flow without strain. This is not exercise in the traditional sense. It is a signal, a reminder to a slowing system that cleanup is still expected before night fully settles in. What makes this so counterintuitive is that it runs against the idea that complete stillness equals rest. For the nervous system, stillness may feel calming. For lymphatic circulation, it is often paralyzing. The body needs a brief transition between activity and full rest. Without that transition, the night becomes a storage period rather than a clearing phase. When the lymphatic system is given even a few minutes of the right signals before sleep, the difference by morning can be striking. Feet feel lighter, skin feels less tight, morning stiffness is reduced, balance improves subtly but meaningfully. These changes don't happen because something was forced or fixed, but because the body was allowed to finish its work. Nighttime swelling is not stubborn, it is unfinished business. And when the lymphatic system is acknowledged instead of ignored, the body often responds with surprising efficiency. Dr. Shigeki Hinohara spent his life reminding patients that the body rarely fails without warning. It speaks softly at first. Swelling is one of those early signals, not an emergency, but not something to ignore. When fluid begins pooling in the feet at night, it reflects changes in circulation, pressure, inflammation, and drainage. None of these appear overnight, and none of them are random. Hinohara often said that health is not the absence of problems, but the ability to respond wisely. That idea matters here. Swelling is not a sentence being handed down. It is a conversation your body is starting. When that conversation is acknowledged early, the outcome is very different than when it is brushed aside year after year. Long-living cultures understood this without medical language. In the regions studied by Dan Buettner, evenings were treated as a time to slow the body, not stimulate it. Activity softened, movements became gentle, breathing deepened. These rhythms supported circulation and fluid balance naturally, without force. The body was guided out of effort and into restoration. This approach protected something essential: stability. Less swelling means less stiffness. Less stiffness means steadier walking. Steadier walking reduces falls, and falls are often the turning point between independence and dependence. The connection is not dramatic, but it is direct. There is also a quieter benefit. When feet feel heavy and tight at night, sleep suffers. Rest becomes shallow. Mornings begin with hesitation. Over time, confidence in movement fades. When swelling eases, even modestly, the body feels more predictable. Balance improves. Trust returns. That trust is central to aging well. None of this requires fear or extremes. The body does not need to be pushed. It needs to be supported where its signals have grown softer. When evening habits respect how fluid actually moves in an older body, mornings often feel lighter, calmer, and more stable. What happens before bed shapes how the body greets the next day. The night is not just rest, it is maintenance. When that maintenance is allowed to happen, the body responds in quiet but meaningful ways. Swelling is not failure, it is feedback, and when feedback is respected, dignity, mobility, and confidence are preserved far longer than most people expect.